Welcome to the Biblical Perspectives for Leadership podcast, where timeless biblical truths meet modern leadership. We are thrilled to have you join us on this journey of exploring how biblical principles can guide us in leading with wisdom, integrity, and purpose. Whether you're leading in the church, your workplace, or your community, this podcast is designed to inspire, challenge, and equip you for the road ahead. Let's dive into today's conversation and discover how Scripture shapes the way we lead.
Welcome back to Biblical Perspectives for Leadership. Today we're embarking on a deep dive into some really fascinating source material you've shared with us. We're looking at excerpts from the Theology of Work material, and we're zeroing in on a story that takes us right back to the very beginning, Genesis chapter 1.
That's right. Our mission with this deep dive is, well, to really unpack what this ancient narrative reveals. Things about creation, about purpose, and how those foundational concepts provide incredibly relevant lessons for leadership principles, and frankly, for our everyday lives today as well. It's about seeing timeless truths reflected in this foundational story, and we're guided by the insights from the material you provided.
Okay, let's unpack this then. The source material, it really wastes no time highlighting a fundamental display of power in this story. God accomplishes all his creative work through spoken words in Genesis chapter 1. That's a key point.
Right, just speaking things into existence.
Right. Exactly. And the material emphasizes that God's power isn't just, sufficient. It's presented as utterly absolute. Creation isn't some fragile experiment. It's shown as robust, secure, all brought into being by divine decree.
Yeah, it wasn't like a struggle against chaos or anything.
No, exactly. It was an ordering through powerful, intentional speech. So let's walk through this incredible account as the source material lays it out, and we can see the pattern emerge. It starts, of course, in Genesis chapter 1, verse 1, with that powerful, concise statement, "In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth."
Just states it, no initial how.
Right. Just the fact that God created, then the sequence begins, and it's marked by that divine speech. The material really points out this deliberate, ordered unfolding. On the first day, Genesis chapter 1, verse 3 tells us, God said, "Let there be light," and there was light.
And right away, separation begins light from darkness.
Then day 2, Genesis chapter 1, verses 6 through 8, God created the expanse, the sky, dividing the water.
Establishing space, structure.
Yeah. Day 3, that's Genesis chapter 1, verses 9 through 13. The waters gathered, dry land appeared, and then that land became fruitful, bringing forth vegetation plants, trees, all designed to reproduce.
So groundwork and provision laid down.
Precisely. Then on the 4th day, Genesis chapter 1, verses 14 through 19, lights in the sky were created. Sun, moon, stars to govern day and night, mark seasons, time.
Order and measurement coming into play there.
Day 5, Genesis chapter 1, verses 20 through 23. The waters and skies filled with living creatures, birds and sea creatures, and they're specifically blessed to multiply and fill their domains.
Abundance, life bursting forth.
Yes. And then on day 6, Genesis chapter 1, verses 24 through 25, the land animals were created. And then, very distinctively, humanity, male and female, created, as the material stresses, in God's image.
That's a really significant point the material brings out.
It is, and they were blessed with the instruction to rule or perhaps steward the rest of creation. It really culminates the creative work with this unique being.
And the pattern you mentioned is just, it's undeniable, isn't it?
Absolutely striking. God said, and it happened.
Just like that.
Immediate, effective action stemming from intention declared through words. And a point the material emphasizes, which you touched on, is that recurring affirmation after each stage, or at least the major stages.
God saw that all he had made was good.
Exactly. That declaration of inherent value is a crucial element the material draws out.
And what's fascinating here, building on that pattern the material highlights, is really the significance of God speaking creation into existence in Genesis chapter 1. Like we said, it wasn't a physical struggle. It was through authoritative declaration.
Right.
And this relates so profoundly to the power of words in our own lives.
Yeah.
Particularly in leadership, but also just in our daily interactions.
How so, specifically?
Well, our words might not create physical matter out of nothing, obviously, but they do create reality in very real ways within our spheres of influence. Think about it. Words can build trust or they can completely erode it. They clarify vision or they create confusion. They motivate action or they instill fear. They define the culture within a team or a family.
That's very true. A leader's words they can really set the tone.
Absolutely. They can quite literally shape the environment, the morale, the effectiveness of those they lead. So just as God's words brought order and being, our intentional, purposeful, and importantly, affirming words can bring order, clarity, and, well, life to the projects we work on and the people we work with.
So the material really underscores that our words aren't just sounds.
Not at all. They carry immense weight and impact. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the orderliness and sequence of creation laid out in Genesis chapter 1, it's not just descriptive, is it?
No, the material suggests it reflects something deeper.
Right, something fundamental about the nature and character of the Creator. There's a logical process, a step-by-step building, a layering of complexity.
So for leaders or anyone managing projects or even just daily life.
Exactly. It's just that planning, structure, process, these aren't impediments to creativity or purpose. Often, they're the very means by which significant good things are accomplished.
So it's not just about having the big idea.
No, it's also about the ordered steps needed to bring that vision into, tangible being. The material implies that divine work, while effortless in power, was still characterized by sequence and structure.
A model for our own efforts, then.
Potentially, yes.
Yeah.
And this raises an important question, drawn directly from the source material's reflection on Genesis chapter 1. You highlighted it earlier. The text emphasizes God seeing that all he had made was good, repeatedly.
Mm-hmm. And specifically noting humanity created in God's image. That's Genesis chapter 1, verses 24 through 25, and again in verse 27.
Right. This strongly affirms the inherent value and dignity of creation, yes, but especially of humanity. The material seems to connect this image not just to appearance, but to our capacity for things like relationship, creativity, rationality.
And the instruction to steward creation from Genesis chapter 1, verses 26 and 28.
Exactly. So what does this imply about how we should view and value those around us? Our teams, colleagues, family, even strangers.
It suggests an intrinsic worth, doesn't it? Not based on performance or utility.
Precisely. Not based on what they can do for us, but on their fundamental identity as image bearers. And that role of affirmation, just as God saw and declared it good, think about the power of acknowledging, appreciating, and affirming the good in others and in the work itself.
It can be transformative.
Absolutely. In leadership, relationships, even our own self-perception. The material suggests seeing the goodness established by God is a crucial perspective to hold.
The source material also touches on purpose, right? It includes that reflection.
Yes, that because we are created, there's an implication that you were created for a purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And understanding this, truly grasping it, can dramatically affect one's outlook and actions. Well, if you believe there's inherent meaning and purpose behind your existence and your work, maybe a sense of contributing to the ordering and flourishing of creation, rooted in that image-bearing identity, it fundamentally changes how you approach things.
Tasks, challenges, setbacks.
All of it. Like the materials reflection section says, whatever you're going through today, keep pressing on. That sense of underlying purpose provides resilience, direction, motivation. It anchors you even in difficult circumstances where the immediate outcome isn't clear or easy.
So it shifts the focus from just getting by.
Exactly, to living and working with intentionality.
Okay, and one more key element from the story and the material rest.
Yes, finally, the material highlights that on the seventh day, God rested. And importantly, blessed and sanctified that day.
Now, this isn't presented because God was physically tired in a human way, right?
No, the material already emphasized his absolute power and sufficiency earlier in Genesis chapter 1. His work wasn't taxing in that sense.
So what's the significance then? Why include the rest?
Well, it seems to establish rest, even after incredibly productive and good work, as a vital, divinely sanctioned principle. The material implies that by blessing and sanctifying it, God set this day apart as holy. It makes rest not just permitted, but perhaps required and meaningful within the rhythm of life.
So for leaders, for everyone, really.
Yes, for everyone. This story suggests rest isn't just idleness or luxury or merely recovery time. It's presented as a necessary, fundamental part of the intended rhythm of life and work.
Essential for sustainability, perspective.
All of that. Sustainability, gaining perspective, renewal, and maybe most importantly, recognizing that our worth and identity aren't solely defined by constant output and productivity.
Interesting. It models placing a sacred value on just stepping back.
On simply being, yes.
Okay, so wrapping this up a bit, what does this deep dive into this ancient story and the material's insights really mean for you, the listener, right now? As you navigate your own life, maybe lead others? How do these principles from Genesis chapter 1 translate into practical application?
Well, whether you're leading a team in an organization, or managing the complexities of a household, or working diligently on a personal project, or even just trying to live a meaningful day, these ideas from the very beginning of the story are, I think, incredibly practical.
Like thinking about the power of your words.
Exactly. Being intentional about how you communicate vision, give feedback, or simply interact with others. Are your words bringing order in life, like in the story, or are they bringing confusion and frustration?
And considering the value of order and process, too.
Right. Approaching tasks with structure, planning, sequence, recognizing that even the divine work itself unfolded in stages.
Then there's reflecting on the inherent value in people.
Yes, recognizing that dignity in everyone you interact with, seeing them as image bearers with intrinsic worth, not just roles or resources. How does that perspective change how you lead, collaborate, or just treat others?
And operating from that place of purpose.
Grounded in the idea that you were created with intention, that can anchor you, empower you to keep pressing on, even when things are tough, just as the material encourages.
And finally, respecting that rhythm of work and rest.
Crucially, yes, seeing rest not as a failure of productivity, but as a fundamental, maybe even sacred, part of a healthy, sustainable life, modeled right there in this foundational story.
So the material really invites us to cultivate a perspective.
A perspective that actively seeks out and affirms the inherent goodness and purpose in the world, in our work, in ourselves, even amidst the difficulties we inevitably face. Okay, so let's leave you with this thought from the source material to mull over as you go about your day. Consider this idea. Just as the story describes God looking at everything he made and declaring it good in Genesis chapter 1, how might intentionally looking for and affirming the good in your work and the people around you, even in yourself, how might that transform your perspective and your ability to lead or simply navigate your day? And related to that, how does the profound concept of being created in God's image from Genesis chapter 1 fundamentally shape your understanding of human dignity and your responsibility towards others and the world around you? Something the material raises in its discussion questions. Just something to think about.
Thank you for joining us on the Biblical Perspectives for Leadership podcast. I hope today's insights have encouraged and equipped you to lead with faith, wisdom, and purpose. Remember, the greatest leader of all time taught us that true leadership is about serving others. If you enjoyed this episode and podcast, be sure to subscribe, share it with others, and leave a review. It helps us reach more people with these transformative truths. Until next time, keep leading with grace and walking in purpose.